When we're thinking about underwriting or joining with folks in ventures, you got to look at them and think like, would I like to be with this person in failure? What would it be like to fail with this person? Not just what would it be like to succeed?
Welcome to the At Depth podcast. I'm Ben Rodgers, your host, here today with Danny Burbeck. And we're going to explore, like we always do, the through lines that connect what we value to how we lead, how we build brands, how we invest. And this is a great podcast for people who love to just push the ideas just a little deeper. And that is a perfect lead in to Danny Burbeck. Danny and I have been working together at Pivotal for 5 years, I guess now, Danny. And our daily is constantly pressing into the deeper questions, the question behind the question underneath the question that's sitting in the back of the room, waiting to be asked. And so here we go. Danny Burbeck, thanks for coming on the show. And I hope we get to do this on a regular basis because this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I was reflecting on how weird it is to do a podcast with someone that you talk to every day, but it's good. And it's good to formally say, let's have a formal conversation and really push deeper together because, when you spend a lot of time with each other, you think you know what's going to be said or what's on the other's mind, but formal conversation is good.
My thought has always been, how do you share the conversation we just had? And you and I have those weekly. And I think, man, if someone could hear this conversation just as it just came out, I think they would really feel something powerful and poignant and impactful and maybe see the world in a slightly different way than they did before.
Yeah, for sure.
Why, Danny, do you think we do that? Why do we tend to go deep?
Why do we tend to go deep? It's more fun, I think. I just get bored with the surface level, and there aren't a lot of opportunities to go deeper because either life is too busy or people aren't comfortable with it. I was overhearing a conversation at the gym last night in the sauna, and it was two guys that really wanted to be having a conversation, but they kept changing the subject whenever it was about to get more interesting, and they just refused to just stay with something long enough. And I was sort of chuckling to myself over that. I was curious about why they were doing that.
It's true, though. Every time I have a deep conversation with somebody, they almost have this sort of hair blown black look, like they just came off a beach. And, oh, wow, that was an amazing conversation. I didn't think it would go there. So there is something refreshing at depth, I think, that restores and nourishes us. I'm curious. I want you to answer this question first. What part of who we are needs that?
My initial response is every part of us. We all have depth, but we don't have a lot of opportunities to operate from it. And so maybe we forget about the depth or aren't taken there. And so when we give people the opportunity to do that, it can be scary. I think that it can be scary or exciting depending for some people. So some shy away from it, and some it's like a window just got open and fresh air comes in and they can realize that they haven't had any fresh air in a while. But I think it's just an invitation to reality, to the depth that's actually there.
I think about people who we've worked with over the past few years that have managed to maintain the value they place on depth inside the workplace. And we'll talk about them in a minute, but why do you think people are so fast to just sort of slough it off, get rid of it, say, I'm at the workplace. Like we can only go so deep here. Like what is it that sets this weird boundary of, let's just work on this assumption that people, every part of you yearns for some kind of depth. And you go to this environment where there's this invisible rule, mystique, corporate pressure that says like, no, that's got to go. Like you got to maintain your professionalism. Do you think that's true? Do you think there is that boundary there? Do you think people are just making it up?
I don't know if it's a real need. I don't know if it's necessary to keep things at the surface. I think there's a desire for efficiency because depth is not efficient in the sense of you don't know where it will go or what its value will be. But if we keep it just on the task at hand, we know we can get through that stuff. And there's a feeling that the task at hand doesn't require depth. So let's just put that over there for now. We'll do that at the bar after work, or maybe if we see each other at some sort of out of work environment. And also there's just keeping things on the surface and at a more efficient level is safer because you don't have to bring as much of yourself to the table. So we can just keep it in the realm that we can control or the realm that we can tie a neat bow around or put in a box. If you go deeper, you don't know what might come out. You don't know what might happen. If I share this part of me, you might not want to work with me anymore on this important practical stuff that makes us money.
And yet, isn't that like the whole goal? Like when you hire somebody or you're looking to build your team, you want to know what they're actually thinking, what's underneath.
Yeah, because those undercurrents, are always there. and they're always at work and they're always shaping. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great thing that you introduced on the co-pilot side is let's start the meeting with just taking the sort of spiritual temperature check of everybody, like, so we can at least just acknowledge where we're at. And then so later on in the meeting, when somebody overreacts to some bad news or gets really way too excited about something that's not a good idea, he's like, oh, yeah, he did say that that's where he started the day, manic or depressed or wherever he was at the beginning. So we can just ride that one.
If you're a 2 out of 10, chances are you're not gonna contribute positively to the meeting. I think about people who love the word professional and professionalism, and there's this language grouping that has occurred, right? So when you say this is professional, it's a professional environment. I think a lot of ideas have glommed onto that word. And I feel like one of the ideas that's glommed onto it is this sort of like distancing. Oh, they're professional. There's this facade up. But I can almost feel that changing where people are realizing that the facade is just insincerity and that what you really, really, really want is to know who you're dealing with and who you're talking with. And I guess I wanted to ask the question to someone who I've seen kind of tap through that facade a little bit. What are the things that bring down what I'll call the dark side of that word, the dark side of professionalism, the fancy clothes, distancing? I'm going to put a bold face on. I'm not going to let you know who I am. I'm just business, business, business. Like, what have you seen that can kind of like rattle that a little bit? Because I think that'd be helpful to people. Like, we all want to move. I'm sorry. In the financial space, you and I meet with some of these fund managers, the ones who are like, here I am. Like, I've got a good idea. I'm pretty smart. I've got a great group of people around me. I acknowledge I don't know everything, but I know this thing real well. And I've surrounded myself with people that know even more. Those are the people that I want to ask more questions, but it's the people that are just like, they've got that high professional facade up that I want to undermine because I need to know. Like, yes, we're in the pitch meeting, you're pitching me your deal. Of course, you're going to be on your best behavior. But like when the fund that we invest in goes oopsie and trips over itself, what kind of person am I going to get then? That's what I'm trying to assess. So maybe give me the Danny Burbeck recipe, if you will, or tactics. How do you break it down?
Yeah, when you started talking about the fund managers, that's exactly where my mind went, is where I see that the professionalism crack in a good way is in people that have had a good deal of success already, people that are in their sort of 40s and 50s that and the 30s and 40s went well and they've done well. And with a lot of these people, they've made more money than they need and they are left and have faced that question of, well, who am I now? Yeah, I've done it. I'm successful. I've made the money. What do I really want out of life? And these are the folks that we see that have dealt with that question well, are the ones where the professional facade isn't needed anymore. And actually, so their quirkiness and their oddities start coming out, and you can see the person that they really are, they really would like to be, that doesn't feel like they need to cover it anymore. And usually involved in those 10 or 20 years of success is also failure too, that they've learned how to grapple with and had to look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, maybe I'm not so good at this, and had to find and figure out who they are without success. It's the young bucks that have a good degree and 5 years in some big company and now striking out on their own that the facade is strong with those or needs to stay strong. But yeah, those are the ones where I think I have the same impulse. I want to poke at that. So I said, what do you really do? What are you really aiming for? And the question is like, how much is enough? How much is enough money? When you make that, who will you be? And what will you do then? Yeah, because I think the professionalism isn't satisfying. It doesn't lead to satisfying relationships. And I think the older guys or the folks that have had more success, they've realized that and they value other things.
They value other things. I want to punch back a little bit to this idea of valuing failure. That to me is a key trait that busts up the facade. When you ask them the question, like, tell me about a big failure you've had, an overly professionalized person will tell you about like a tiny failure. Someone who's cracking will tell you about a failure, but be very sort of clinical about it. And then the third kind of person is someone who just like gives you a quick little emotional, that sucked.
I
Oh,
lost it all. Oh,
I lost it all. Let me add story and I'm going to tell it to you. Those people to me are the ones that have sat down with failure and given it a big hug, stared it in the face, and they kind of know the shape of the thing. And the other two make me a little nervous. Is it going to break you? Is a failure going to crush you?
yeah. Yeah. And what kind of friend will you be or partner at least? Yeah, I guess when you look at people, when we're thinking about underwriting or joining with folks in ventures, you got to look at them and think like, would I like to be with this person in failure? What would it be like to fail with this person? Not just what would it be like to succeed?
Is this something to fail over? I have a really fun anecdote that you and I have lived through. And I think about the deal that we did with the 3 oil and gas wells. And it was so refreshing to get a call from our partners in that and have them just be even more frustrated than we were. And granted, I think part of that was just their character. And I think the other part of it too is that we were well aligned. Like they had invested a lot more time, energy in the deal than we had.
Hmm.
And so for them, it felt like massive, but it was so nice to get a little bit of emotional sharing. And I would call them like a very unemotional crew. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say this is the group that you're going to sing Kumbaya with, but it was clear to see like they were disappointed. They were willing to share that disappointment with us through what I would call the healthy professionalism of here are the questions that we're asking, here are the rocks that we're going to overturn to try to find a solution, and here's how we're handling the problem. And lines of communication are more than open. We want to have all
Hmm.
the talk that you want to have.
I remember it. Yeah, what I was thinking added on to that story is that when we first underwrote that deal, one of the important parts of their story was they had lost everything once before. That
Yeah.
isn't that right? That they had
Yeah.
things had gone south in 2008, or well, I don't know when it was, and bankruptcy even at some point in their past. And so for us, that was like a red flag originally when we saw, okay, wait a minute, they've been through bankruptcy. We went and looked at the story and talked to them about failure and talked to them how they worked through it. On the surface, when you write it on paper, like, oh, these guys invested with someone who had gone bankrupt and then the deal didn't go well. So they should have known better. But I think it's sort of the opposite is that we knew they were honest with us about that and we got comfortable with it. And so when things didn't go like we expected or hoped, it's like, yeah, we knew that was a possibility. And we still were happy to be in relationship with these folks. We're not going to keep drilling. It's like
Right.
that project wasn't worth continuing, but they saw that too. And I'm happy to fail with those guys.
I'm ready for the next one with them too. I mean, these are the kind of people that, their history, let's say it's marked by the big failure of the earlier years and then what we'll call like a disappointment grade failure in this deal that we did together, not a failure to perform or to follow through on everything that they said they were going to do, right? Everything they could control
Yeah.
was controllable and we all took the risk. We knew the risks and we knew that that was the way the coin toss could go was that way, sort of like a 2/3 chance it was going to go great and a 1/3 chance it would be meh, and it went meh. So like, whatever, that was the odds. It makes you want to go do more deals with them because they were so clear.
Mm.
And they have also been very successful in the past too. Like they can own
Mhm.
those failures, but then you look at them and you're like, yeah, but you guys, you also know what you're doing. And you've
Mhm.
done, for generations, you've done an amazing job making good decisions. This is just one of the banana peel moments, but we're fine. No one's bleeding, just a little bruised and carry on. I think seeing the forest for the trees is important too. Like, do people let you see the whole person? And to me, that's something that in business, I hope is changing. It feels like it's changing, but people are willing to sort of disclose more of who they are as a whole and allow for connection on those different fronts.
If you've only got professionalism to judge by, so someone presents very professional and then things go wrong, that's all you've got to make a judgment on why it went wrong and how you feel about it is that surface level relationship that you started out with. And another thought I was having just before was in the investing world, I think that it's important that we say that investors are entrepreneurs. And it seems like people that are willing to go invest in things like we do have an entrepreneurial spirit, which is one of adventure and camaraderie and going after the unknown and trying things and taking risks. And at least the way that I used to view it, investing was just sort of, let's just see if we can make a lot of money. That's the number one goal. But people could choose to go gamble. They could choose to deal drugs. They could choose to put their money in the stock market. They could choose to do alternative investing. There's lots of ways to make money. Or they could just go get a really great degree and get into IT. Maybe that won't be so good in the next 10 years. Who knows? But the people that get into investing like we do, they're all entrepreneurs in their mind. Either they have their own businesses or they just got that spirit. And so at the heart of it, you have to ask the question, why do they pick that? Why do they pick that path? And I think a lot of them pick it for the relationships and the camaraderie and saddling up together and heading out into unknown territory and crossing gorges and fighting snakes and weather and who knows what we're going to face together. That's why they do it, really, especially after they get successful. And they've got enough to live on. They have their basic needs. After that, it has to be for the adventure and for the interest and the relationships, curiosity and the thrill of the deal or whatever it is.
It turns crappy at some point, doesn't it?
Every adventure does.
Every adventure turns crappy at some point.
Yes.
And you've heard me just going on and on about this over the past year that it is so much more fun to do crappy things with good people. And so, how do you bend your business ideas and that entrepreneurial directedness? I think a lot of people chase the idea, oh, I want to start this little thing. I got this little widget. And they spend a lot of time and energy building out the widget. And then when I think of you and I sitting with seasoned entrepreneurs through the pivotal side of the business, those are people who are like, either the idea was handed to them over like generationally. So they don't get to fall in love with the idea. the idea was given to them. Hey, this thing was Grandpappy's idea and now it's yours. Or it's just sort of boring industry or business and they got into it for highly practical reasons. Those people, it's so interesting the value they place on the people around them, or that's the struggle that they're dealing with. It's like, I can't think of hiring another person that isn't someone I want to be around because I got to show up to this thing every day and be here. Do I like the people that I'm with? I think about Optimum down in South Portland, Maine. And I asked him last year, I think it was, I said, hey, years ago, you said, do you want to come to the office and like all the people that you see? And he said, oh, yeah, I remember saying that. I said, great. Well, years later, with I think 35 people in the office, they had two, no, one. Now they have 35. I said, when you walk in, do you like the team you're on? And he's like, I love the people. I love the people and I love seeing them love each other. Like we all like being there together and sort of like, well, whatever comes up today, I like the people I'm with and we'll figure a way out. We'll do it. And he said, we don't spend a lot of time on drama. We spend a lot of time pushing through the hard stuff together and sharing the joys together. Because a lot of people don't realize this is the best picture. I've got a friend who's a fly fishing guy and he loves to fly fish, but he fly fishes by himself a ton. And the biggest fish he's ever caught, he was alone. And I was out fishing with him one day. He's like, this is where I caught the biggest fish I've ever caught in my entire life. I'm like, wow, what did you do? He said, I was just hipping and hollering and I found myself looking around to see if I could get some other boat or a kayak to come see this because there was no one there to share with. He said, here I was, like with my phone. I can't take a picture of the biggest fish you've ever caught. Like it's too big for a selfie. He's this old guy. And I thought, man, that is exactly right. People could go, here's this cute little idea. I'm going to go manifest it and build it. And let's say it becomes a success. If there's no one there to sort of share the high five with, how empty that actually feels. And so maybe the priority isn't, let's take my idea and make $1 bajillion with it. The priority is like, let's take this idea, whoever it is. And if the idea has merit, build wonderful people, work very hard to build a wonderful team around it. And let's all try to achieve this together. It's like war, except for you don't have to kill people. Look at soldiers. I mean, the camaraderie that's built in platoons and groups of people, especially in the special forces, they really care for each other.
They have to. That's central. Yeah. And we do too.
We do too.
It's life or death, but I think it's sink or swim for every business. Can I shift it very slightly? And the next question I want to ask you, Ben, is what does this mean for leaders? Because as a leader, you want to do stuff with other people, but you're not on the team. When you're the leader, you're not one of the gang. You have to sit above it. You have to carry things on your own. What does that look like for a leader? And you sit in that spot for us at Pivotal, and working by yourself is lonely, but there's a kind of loneliness that comes from being the leader as well. How do you think about that? I know you love having me on board and Laura and our team, and we have a lot of fun working together, but you still do wake up in the morning with it on your shoulders more than I do, at least for in this part of my life.
I think the number one thing I do is I look for people to complain to. Have a little complaining repository that's uninvolved or a little bit distant from the situation. And then be sure that if you complain 60% of the time, be sure and tell them about 40% of the wins too. That's not a comrade. That's like a repository. Sadly, my wife is this for me now, and that I need to probably find another repository. But I would say like beyond the repository, it's this idea of coaching, mentorship, someone who can walk the journey with you, who's a totally detached person, who really cares about you, wants to see the whole person, is willing to see the whole person. Probably has like one or two good boundaries, but also maybe has dropped the fence on sort of some traditional boundaries as well, and has this willingness to just let you say it like it is and get stuff off your chest, but then can give you feedback and really engage the dialogue. Someone who kind of empathizes with the journey that you're on. So I think that's one category. But then I think what that person does well is they help you show yourself to the team. I think oftentimes some people are very good at this. Like they know exactly how to be 100% themselves with the team, but not divulge things that aren't appropriate for the team to hear, right? Like, oh, we're in a cash crisis. You don't walk around to like your lead manager who just like started working for you last month and say, we've got a cash crisis. You work that out with this other third party who doesn't have a dog in the fight. But you are still yourself. And if they're like, hey, how are you doing today? And you say, I'm sorry, there's just some things in the business that are wearing on me. Like I'm having a hard time. It's a tough day for me. Gonna make it through, gonna be fine. But like I'm people. I'm carrying stuff. Not gonna divulge what it is, but it's hard. And I'm really glad you're here. There's that element of being able to sort of pick out which things to share because people need that transparency. I think about some of the best people that we've gotten to work with over the years, Danny, and they have that beautifully. I mean, like they know how to be really close to people without like burdening them. So they could sit there and say like, this is my problem. I'm frustrated today, but it's not your problem. I'm really glad you're here. Or vice versa, when it comes to sort of the positive and sharing, they are full tilt. It's not like some old person in the back there and be like, "You kids celebrate. I knew we were gonna win anyway." It's like, who's the person that like jumps in the middle of the ring and goes like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing."
I mean, a bit of it is like parenting in a sense that as a parent, you cannot bring your kids into all your difficulties and you shouldn't. And you're there to carry those for them. And they're there to do their part and grow. But also, like, they need to know you need to be real with them as well. You can't just pretend like everything's okay all the time. And then, why is mommy crying? She's not crying. Everything's fine. No, mommy was crying. As leaders in businesses, there's a bit of that. You sort of have to be a buffer, but it's hard in businesses because you don't have a spouse. So there's that solo place at the top. Have you seen business leaders do that well with each other? Because I mean, they say that seems like a natural support group would be other CEOs or other founders or entrepreneurs. You see them doing that well with each other? Do they have opportunities to?
I don't hear of it.
I thought you were going to say that.
I had a conversation with Kendrick about this last week, actually. And he said someone asked him if he had a lot of business mentors. And he said he doesn't think of them as mentors. They are more like information hubs. It's like this sort of curated grouping of information that they give to me, but I don't necessarily see them as like mentors, like leading me in the way of life. And he is one of the people that I thought would have said, yes, I have mentors.
But if anybody would go out and find them, he would.
Right. But he was very careful about sort of separating this concept of a mentor away from people who just have good information and good resources in a friendly format. I don't think I see them doing it well. There are organizations that try to put together boards. I was on one of these, and recently one has been working on recruiting me to do this here in New England. And you put together boards of business owners, and they sort of act as an advisory board to one another. And I did that for years, and I think there's some benefit to it. But I think the difference is that it's not any of those people's job to be there for the other person.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think boards are good, but they don't solve the comprehensive problem because everybody there is trying to get the value out of the board.
Even if they're not, there's a capacity issue.
There is, yeah.
You add all that it takes to be the leader of an organization and say, okay, now you need to support this other leader of their organization. Like, love to, but got no time.
We were on a board with a guy who his problem was so different than ours. Like, we were in the middle of a lawsuit with some of the business partners, of the business that we were in at the time. It was getting messy. Cash flow was constrained. We had good product, but costs, everyone just demanded more money. So costs were skyrocketing. It felt intense. And there were like one or two other people on the board that had that same intensity. And this other guy was like so successful, he was working on a succession plan. And it was very difficult to care. It's like, you're at the sunset of your career. How are you going to get paid all this money to just sort of float on? And you've been training this person for 10 years and you're just like trying to learn new habits, like how to, adjust to a retirement lifestyle rather than being a full-time architect. And I remember that feeling so disjointed.
You're in the trenches of
Literally, it's like someone sending you a care package of Band-Aids when you're in the trenches. It's like, these Band-Aids do nothing. I don't need Band-Aids. I need like food. I need rations. And if we're going to send medical supplies, you got to fix cannon wounds. It's not scratches, y'all.
And that leads me to something that I was thinking about for this conversation is really the value of listening and what it takes to be a good listener. It's very hard to be a good listener when you are fighting your own battles. Like, I know you're in the middle of a warfare and I just need you to listen to my problems here for a minute. Let's put our heads together on my problems. And I think that's probably the way that most people feel about their life in general. And what I was thinking about why listening is so rare and some of the lovely feedback we've gotten recently is that we listen to people and that you guys just listen. And why that's a rarity is because I think most people feel like a lot of their life is a battle. And I think a lot of people feel like they're just holding on by the skin of their teeth and just making it through. And so when other people come into their lives to ask them to listen, they're like, sorry, I just don't have the capacity for that. Much rather just talk at you. And that seems to be the nature of a lot of relationships is people just talking at each other. You have to just put your own stuff down for a while to listen. And it's a tough ask. Why do we do it?
Before I answer that question, I'll ask another question just to flesh it out a little further is, how do you put yourself in the posture of listening?
I don't know. That's why I ask is like, I think it's just sort of a natural thing. A temperamental thing. I was thinking this morning actually that when I was in high school, I had a summer job working downtown Raleigh, and there was this like inner city park where the homeless people hung out right outside the front door of the business. And I would take every break I could and lunch breaks to go sit in the park and talk to these homeless people. And they would just talk and they would just tell me their stories. And I'd get them to buy me cigarettes because I wasn't 18. So it was this like little barter system and they would just talk and I would just listen. And what I just sensed this overwhelming need for these people. They just needed to talk. And I found what they had to say interesting. And I think I've just sort of carried that on, that people want to talk. And I actually find it interesting to listen to them. To most people, just what's going on in this person's head. And it's always different. Everybody's so different. And it's just interesting. And I like listening. I like hearing what they have to say. And very often people aren't very interested in what I have to say. And so I'm okay. Like, I don't feel like they need to bust in and make them listen to me. So I just listen.
There's an irony to this whole podcast, Danny.
Here we are talking about ourselves.
Let the listeners speak.
Right. Yeah.
I think you make an interesting point, though, that curiosity sits at the base of good listening. You have to genuinely think that you don't know everything and think that someone other than you might be able or willing to impart something to you or to themselves in a process. And so oftentimes I find if someone doesn't know the answer and I don't know the answer, keep listening, and sometimes they'll tell themselves the answer. There's a real value in the actual aspect of giving your attention to somebody. Think about all the things that we give our attention to and what things give their attention to us.
That's an upside down, an inversion of the modern attention economy we talk about. We have in it. That is the greatest asset out there that everybody's trying to get, is people's attention. What we offer is we give attention in our business.
Everything in your world is demanding your attention, and I would like to give you mine. I think there's a power in that, Danny.
That's powerful.
It's so unspoken, but when I open my ears to somebody and genuinely become engrossed in the conversation and hearing what they have to say, they change. I say very little, but I'm very careful about what I say. Like, I want my question to say, I heard you. I'm with you right there. But also, I'm a little taller than you and I can see just over this hill. And I'm curious if we could go see that together. That looks interesting. And then I find that they love going. Like, they love to pick their head up and go, oh my goodness, like, wow, you're with me. You hear where we've been, you understand where I am, and you think we could go over there? And you say, yeah, I think we could go over there. And they just, all they need is an invitation. No one's invited them. Everyone just demands their attention.
I think my favorite point in conversations is when people half say something. They say it and they get to a thought and then they gloss over it and move on, or they get stuck and move on. And those are the hills that you're talking about. That's what I see, is like, that was a horizon right there. And you just stopped before you went over it. Let's go over that. Wait. What was that? I was listening to someone I work with weekly today, and I don't know if I said a word for a half an hour. And then he stumbled over one sentence and sort of glossed it over, like, oh, you know what I mean? I was like, whoa, say that again. And just like opened us up in a huge new territory and great conversation, wonderful, interesting stuff. But I don't know why he wasn't willing to go there. But when someone stops halfway through a thought, like, that's the thought you want to follow. That's the trail you want to follow. That's the trailhead that we just walked by. I'm like, oh, let's go down that one.
That is listening mastery right there, because you have to actually be listening for those tiny little gaps.
Because people are taking you along a journey of their own thought world. And usually the journey is one that they've traveled a lot. And so people will generally, fall into the things they are thinking of and saying. It's those little moments where they hiccup. That's like the invitation to get out of the rut and like, let's move this conversation, your internal dialogue, further past where it's been. I can't stand scripted conversations that you have to have in most situations, on an airplane, at a meet and greet, a cocktail social hour. I can't wait to get off that rut as fast as possible.
And the conversation comes full circle. We all want depth. At every part of who you are wants some level of depth. I think that's it.
So you just have to learn to invite, to offer the right invitation to step off, because not everybody wants to and need to respect that.
Yeah. But I think, going back to earlier in the conversation, as we bring it to a little landing here, it is this idea of how do leaders readjust this concept of professionalism? How do they develop a culture of people that they want to be around? And I would say that listening and trying to know people in a genuine way, rather than like, hey, you serve my interests, here you are, or rather to see them and understand them, that builds incredible humanity. And I think that is one of those tools that can really build a lot of rapport with people. That doesn't necessarily require you to divulge everything about yourself. Yeah, transparency is important. I harped on that. But I think the other piece too is like, if you really take the time and energy to know somebody, there's extreme power in that, healthy power that can say, hey, a good leader looks at somebody on their team and says, you're having an off day. I remember you told me, like, sometimes you have off days, and usually it's like every time I've asked you, you have an off day, and you say yes, it's always something with your kids or with your wife. Like, you good? I don't need to hear the whole story, right? Like, I'm not your therapist, but what's going on? Oh, we're just having a hard time with pickup and drop off. It's causing a lot of stress. And my wife and I were fighting about this morning. They may be considering leaving their job because they can't work the stress out around drop off and pickup. And maybe for you as a business owner, that's like, hey, dude, can you show up 15 minutes early on Friday? Yes? Okay, well then cut out 15 minutes early on Thursday. You don't need to be questioning your career over this little question, but let's address this. But you have to be willing to listen in order to get that level of stuff. And I can't imagine there were people that have let top talent leave because they didn't listen. And I think listening is just probably one of the most understated, that shift of attention, like we were talking about, in a world that demands your attention, giving your attention to people is an extraordinarily powerful gift. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. We should do this more often.
Well, I think we will do it more often. We're going to have Danny back on the show. We're going to do more riffing like we have done here today and talk about what depth looks like and why it's valuable. I mean, that to me, something's missing if you're not understanding why thinking a little bit deeper can bring so much value to everything that you do in life and in business as well.
And doing it with someone else.
That's important. So thanks, Danny Burbeck. Thank you all for listening to the At Depth podcast. If you want to find out more about what Danny and I do together, you can go to pivotal.com, Pivotol. That is our brand development and coaching and consulting business. If you want to find out more about investing, you can go to covepilot.com, COVE pilot.com. Thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate you. This was a fantastic conversation with Danny Burbeck, and we hope to do a few of these intermittently throughout the podcast. We're always having fun conversations and ideas that we'll be sure to pause and share with all of you. If you want to find out more about the kind of work that Danny and I do, go to pivotal.com, Pivotol. And interestingly enough, I think we're going to refer back to this in a lot of future podcasts as well. So for any of you who've come from the future to listen to this one, thank you so much. I hope it was relevant to the other conversations that we've been having. Thank you all for listening.